So how do we take the psychology and the neuroplasticity thoughts and translate them into flavor and flavor development? We look at what nature does, and we understand that nature is very complex in the way that it creates its own flavor profiles. But what we also know is that the brain only requires a representation of some of those flavor components. And so the flavorist will then take a large enough representation of those flavor components to recreate a flavor. So let's look at an example of creating an apple flavor. What would go into making an apple flavor? Well, before we can just go into the laboratory and start mixing chemicals, we need to understand the personality of the apple profile. So we would go and we would take apples and kind of psychoanalyze them to understand the character components that create the apple flavor profile. That's done using descriptive analysis panels, these panels of humans that would taste an apple and then describe the various profile components, that personality component of the apple. And that information gets translated into different descriptive terms. So when we think about an apple, there's probably approximately 30 descriptive terms that could be used to understand the profile of an apple. So some of those terms could be sour, mealy, baked, cooked, red. And these describe that personality of the apple. So then the flavor chemist will go and try to understand what type of flavor he or she wants to make around that apple personality. So maybe they're making a candy apple flavor. They would pick out the personality pieces of the apple that relate to a candy apple. And so that might be sweet, sour, tart, chemical-like. And they would take those descriptive terms and find chemicals that represent those descriptive terms. And those would become the characterizing components of the flavor. So what they're doing is they're building out their own personality of this apple flavor. So when the consumer places that candy apple flavor in their mouth, they will get the experience of those character components, those personality components indicative of that flavor profile. And when it goes through their memory banks and they are able to make that association with the apple essence, their cognition then would be, I've just consumed a candy apple flavor. So that's what flavor companies do. They take what nature creates and recreate it for consumers.